you for joining us live on this week's show. We're going to preview UFC 223 coming up this Saturday on pay-per-view. And we're also going to talk about Bellator 196 along with Bellator Kickboxing 9, which will be happening this Friday on Paramount Network TV, the United States. Once again, I am your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham or on Instagram at the Jim Graham. And of course, please like us here on MMA World and MMA UK. My co-host, Kayla Beatty, will be joining me shortly. Again, as I said, any comments, questions, concerns, or trolling, anything you want to do, please comment below down in the comment box, and we'll get to them as the show progresses. And again, we're going to talk about UFC 223, Bellator 196, Bellator Kickboxing 9. May even throw in a little Glory 52, which happened this past weekend in Los Angeles. And of course, again, get to your comments and maybe some other headlines and craziness that's happened in this past week of MMA here for the first week of April in 2018. So, be joined by my co-host, Kayla Beatty, here in just a second, better known as MMA Fangirl. And again, you can follow her on Twitter at fangirl_MMA on Twitter and Instagram. So, all right, I hope everybody had a good Easter Sunday. And of course, last week I was solo, so glad to be back on the program, back live. And my normal co-host, Kayla Beatty, in the passenger seat here with me as we talk about what should be a great night of fights from Brooklyn. And here is Kayla. And how you doing, Kayla?
Hey, Jim. Hey, guys. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just telling everybody, hope they had a great Easter Sunday just a few days ago.
Yeah. What did you do to celebrate the holiday, or just enjoy your Sunday?
Yeah, I just had some family over for some food, watched a movie afterwards, pretty relaxing. Usually we do a bigger gathering, but this year was kind of smaller. We had some normal family was on their other side of the family and that sort of deal, so a little smaller, more low-key dinner here. And it was at our house, which was nice. We didn't have to go anywhere and travel, so it was a nice.
Yeah,
How about you?
nice. I didn't get to see family or anything. I actually just spent it with the roommates. It was a pretty chill Sunday.
Now, I believe I saw something that said this was the first time Easter Sunday and April Fool's Day was on the same day for 50 years or something like that, the first time it's happened, but it's going to happen again in another 11 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
And how funny enough, we got some of the craziest MMA news, of course, on April Fools. No one wanted to believe it.
yeah, myself,
Wait till Monday.
if anyone saw my tweets at Jim Graham, I was in shock because this is the fourth time we've had Tony versus Habib matched up, and this is now the fourth time, for whatever the case may be, that this matchup has been canceled. It is now officially, if you're keeping score, 2 times for Tony Ferguson and 2 times for Habib. So the next matchup will be the rubber match, and somebody will pick the better fighter. So we'll find out, I think, regardless of the next fight, right?
I mean, it's so funny because, of course, Dana's like, it's never happening. I'm not going to schedule this fight ever again. But then you have, I think, Khabib's dad or his team saying, no, we still want this fight. Of course, fans still want it. But, yeah, the last I heard, the boss says it's the last fight he wants to put together because it's just cursed.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If these guys are continuingly to be the top guys at 155 pounds, it has to happen because
yeah,
obviously Tony is the interim champion. I don't know if that's being stripped because a new champion will be crowned this weekend, regardless of whether he was in it or not. So even if you strip it, to me, he's earned his right to fight for the championship. He's the number 1 contender, injury aside. So if Habib wins, that's the next logical fight because, again, Conor doesn't seem interested in fighting. So who else would you book him against? And so to me,
Hey, Miles.
Yeah,
Oh,
Miles
sorry.
will be man in the comments today, so he'll help us out if anybody asks a question if we miss it or anything. So, um, yeah, so that to me is kind of like maybe he will be against it for next, but um, to me it's got to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree too. Like all the points you're making, are so valid. And I think the last thing that Dana said at the press conference yesterday is that the interim belt is not going to be stripped from Tony, but the belt will be stripped from Connor. And I don't know if you checked the news. I just looked at Twitter and stuff right before I hopped on. He's not happy about that and has been causing some trouble. But yeah, like you said, I mean, if Tony's the deserving man, and really, I think I was listening to Joe and Brennan, I think on Joe's show, Joe Rogan show. Um, he made a good point. Out of anybody in the division, Tony's the guy that's really going to test Khabib and show us if he, is this super dominant champion in the making or not. Not that Max Holloway can't do that, but Tony's the guy that's really going to test him. So it's a fight that has to happen. I just really hope this fifth time coming around, we actually get it.
Yeah, I believe when you've won, what is it, like 11 or 12 fights in a row, and you've done that in the UFC, that's deserving of fighting for your division's championship. So
Yeah.
he should allow that to happen, regardless whether it's Habib or Max. And obviously, whether they were going to strip him of the interim title or not, to me, it was a de facto kind of thing anyway. To me, the important thing is
Yeah.
he gets the opportunity to fight for the championship. The combining of titles and all that, to me, is irrelevant. It doesn't really hold any significance to me. So as long as he fights the winner, I don't care whether
Who cares?
he
Yeah.
has that or not. So that to me has to happen. And
Now, have you seen some of the stuff that Connor's doing?
yeah, he's talking about like
The video.
I'm not the one being stripped. You know, I said that I was ready and all this and all that. And I kind of call BS on all this stuff because it's been I think he's gone the longest. He officially broke the Cain Velasquez record of the longest without defending a championship. I believe he did in terms of number of days. So
Yeah.
right there, you don't really have too many grounds to speak on. No,
Well, there's some videos that
you
were
know.
just leaked, and him and his team are like there in Brooklyn at the press, at media day or the press conference that's being set up, and there are things being thrown, like huge objects being thrown, and apparently Michael Chiesa was injured or his face was injured with Connor, one of the members of the team, throwing something. I guess at some of the fighters, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can look this up while we go through the show and see if we can get updates. But he's definitely there making a statement that he's not happy about being stripped. But what can you do?
Well, that's what happens when you
He's
don't
gonna
fight.
fight.
I mean, that that's the
Trauma.
case. He can sit and complain all he wants, but when you don't fight, you don't deserve to have the championship belt. That's just how it works. Um,
Yeah.
when
He's
he
about to get
wants to fight
arrested.
again, they'll get it. Now, again, he talks about how he doesn't like doing the world tour and all that stuff, but when you're getting paid significantly more than any other fighter on the roster, that's the sacrifice you got to make. You
Hmm.
know, when you're getting paid, I'm just throwing out numbers here, so these could be completely wrong. So don't behold us. But if you're getting paid 10 million and your opponent's getting paid one, that's kind of how it works. They want to kind of parade you around. They want to show you off. And so, as
Yeah.
much as he doesn't like it, he's an enemy of his own success. When you get paid that much, that's what you have to do. Now, granted, I don't think they should be doing 4 or 5 stop city world tours. I think those are old and outdated. I think just one big press conference would suffice. But doing TV interviews, from his gym in London, satellite stuff, that's fine because he's not going anywhere extra. It's not really taking away much from his training. Those are fine. I have no problem with that. But that's kind of the sacrifice you make when you're the number one guy. Everyone wants to talk to you, and the fact he's made it kind of a career of talking in front of the mic is another reason why they do those sort of things too. If he was just kind of a ho-hum guy, like maybe like an Anderson Silva guy, they probably wouldn't bother with that because they know nothing's going to come out of it. But when he's continually talking trash, it's kind of hard to not put that guy in front of a microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, lots of responsibility comes when you're trying to be a face of something and be the star. But let's see. Well, as we go through the show, I'll try to keep updated with it. But yeah, he's definitely causing a terror there in Brooklyn.
And of course, fans, if you want to keep us updated below in the chat window, that'd be great as well. And we got a couple of Miles is checking in. I already said hi to Miles, hi to Lewis checking in, and a hi to Chris Moreno also checking in. Thanks, guys, for watching this week live here on MMA World for Beyond the Cage. So obviously, Tony got hurt because he randomly stepped up a curb or something, tore his LCL. They waited a few days, and they decided he wasn't clear to fight. Then all of a sudden, they tab Max Holloway to fight, which is pretty crazy, Caleb, because just about a month ago, he was supposed to fight Frankie Edgar. He couldn't go in that one because of a broken foot. And now we're about a month later, and now all of a sudden his foot's miraculously healed, and now he's fighting up a weight class for the lightweight belt. Is that even more crazier than Tony getting hurt? I'm not even really sure. And the fact, like you said, all of this happened on April Fool's. It was almost too much for most fans like myself to kind of take in. And boy, what do you think? Just preliminary thoughts of this matchup. We'll obviously later on in the show break it down more thoroughly and obviously pick a winner. But what was your kind of initial reaction to seeing Max Holloway versus Khabib Nurmagomedov for the lightweight title?
Yeah, well, because of the day that it fell on, and then just the past of what we're talking about with Tony and Khabib not following through, my first reaction was definitely like, oh, it must be an April Fool's joke. But the more I read into it and saw bigger news outlets confirming it, I'm such a fan of Max Holloway, and I think that no matter what happens, we're all going to just respect him even more. He thinks he's hearing around that everyone, is talking about Khabib and how he's the best pound for pound fighter, how he's a challenge, how no one has felt that strength like that. And I give it to Max for wanting to step up and get this fight. Um, it'll be interesting too to see, how much money he made out of it, since I don't know if you'd call it a super fight, but obviously he saved the event stepping up. But stylistically, I think that he definitely could be a challenge for Khabib. It's just a matter of, like everyone's saying, the amount of time that he's had to prepare, the amount of time he's had to recover from that injury. What was your first initial reaction on
That
the
was the thing that
matchup?
really got me, was the whole foot thing, because he was talking about how, yeah, the foot's going to set me back a little bit, but I should be good to fight by, June or July. I heard maybe they're trying to do a fight right here in my home state, Hawaii, so maybe I'll wait till August. And so I thought, oh, we're not going to see Max Holloway to the summer. So to me, it completely threw me for a loop to hear that he's now fighting Khabib. It just completely threw me off. And to me, if you're Frankie Edgar, you got to be super pissed, because he's like, wait a minute, come on, really? He's telling me you broke your foot in a month, you're ready to go? I could have fought for the world champ. You know what I mean? Like, how serious was this injury then, if he can go less than a month later? That's all I'm saying. I think that's
Well,
a little
I
strange.
don't think it was a month. I think it was closer to 2 months, but still. I mean, yeah, that it must not have been as serious. But at the same time, too, if you're the champ and you've been on this dominant run, you don't want to, chance your title. At least in this case, he's not, risking his title. But yeah, I mean, poor Frankie Edgar, he's really gotten, the short end here
So,
in the last couple months.
all right, more 223. Hey, Ray, thanks for checking in once again.
Hey, Ray.
We'll be getting more 223 here coming up, and what is a fantastic card. And also, of course, what kind of overshadowed the news this weekend as well. We lost Matt Brown, and Carlos Condit also got dropped from the card. But, of course, that kind of got overshadowed by the main event. But other than that, a great card shaping up for the fans there at the Barclays Center out in Brooklyn, New York. So before we, again, get to that full, complete main card preview along with our picks of the main card, Bellator also returns to action. They also kind of took a couple-week hiatus along with the UFC, and they're returning with an excellent card for the fans there in Budapest, Hungary, with a double MMA and kickboxing feature for the fans there. And I couldn't be more excited. I think this is a fantastic night of fights there for the fans in Budapest. Kicked off with the main event, of course, of Roger Huerta against former UFC champion Ben Henderson. which is super interesting. Of course, we all remember Roger Huerta probably from his UFC days. He was actually the first ever mixed martial arts fighter on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And since that time, he had a loss there to Kenny Florian. And then I remember he jumped ship not too long after that. He also had a loss to Gray Maynard. Went to Bellator, didn't have a great run the first time around, very early on in Bellator. He beat an unknown guy by the name of Chad Hitton, and then he ran into a guy at the time no one had ever heard of, and Pat Curran, lost to him. Then was able to take on Eddie Alvarez anyway, the guy everyone thought he would eventually face in the finals of their then static tournament format. Fought him anyway in a non-title fight, ended up looking really bad and got knocked out in that fight in the second round. Then, believe it or not, he actually went to a local organization where he actually moved up to 170 and took on War Machine and got knocked out in the third round. He then took a little bit time off, actually was one of the first big stars signed with, now One Championship, but they were kind of going by One FC at that time. And he ended up going 2-3 for One FC. Kind of had fought over the from 2012 to about 2016, actually winning his last fight with the organization. That was only back in November of 2016. He then most recently fought in, looks like the Middle East, in an organization called Phoenix FC, where he actually took on former Ultimate Fighter winner Haider Hassan. That was at welterweight as well, actually winning, but it was via disqualification. So he is currently on a 2-fight winning streak, or running his overall record to 24-9 with a draw and a no contest as well. Now 34 years old, moving back down to lightweight. It'll be interesting to see how he is, because obviously, they're building up as, he hasn't fought in Bellator in 8 years, and, he's kind of been back and forth fighting for different organizations. But I think it's clear really, to me, after that Kenny Florian loss, it never quite seemed like he was that same guy. That loss where he got outpointed just never really seemed like he kind of got back to where he was. And now at 34, obviously he's still a guy that's competitive, but I'm not sure, even in his, I would call it his prime back then, Kayla, that he was at the level of somebody like a Benson Henderson.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't know, it's an interesting fight for both men. Obviously more on the line for Benson Henderson, but this might be a good fight that he needs, just because of the skid that he's had. But at the same time, experience fighting around the world, who knows? Maybe that's what he needed to make his return back to Bellator. And, if he feels confident in fighting and going against someone like Benson Henderson, all the more power to him. I think that from what I had read, he said that, he's really tried to clear up the holes in his game too, of instead of being that pressure fighter, of, taking his shots more wisely. But it's a very important fight for Benson Henderson. How do you feel about just his run in Bellator so far?
Well, it hasn't been great. He's actually looked, honestly, I don't think there's a fight of his 4 fights. I don't think there's any fights where he's looked good, to be honest. I think he's looked pretty bad in all 4 of them. Look at his first fight, obviously up a weight class. He got absolutely destroyed by a guy that was just way bigger than him and way stronger than him, and Andrei Korzhakov. Then he takes on the smaller Pitbull brother, the featherweight Pitbull brother, who moved up in weight. Actually, I thought he was losing that fight, and the only reason he won is because Pitbull broke his foot and couldn't continue. He did not look good in that fight. Then he fights Michael Chandler. Now, I will say that was a tremendous fight, but he still lost. At the end of the day, he still lost. It was a close fight. It was competitive, but it still wasn't what we expected from Benson Henderson. He definitely got tagged a lot. He got hit a lot. They're really, to me, yeah, he had better conditioning than Michael Chandler, but realistically, he never put Chandler in that precarious of a position, and I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't win that split decision, because Chandler, to me, did way more damage in that fight. Then he takes on the other Pitbull brother, right? Loses to him. I didn't see that coming. Split decision again. Kind of looked like he was going through the motions and stuff, and I know recently he took a match in Polaris against AJ Azargan, which is a grappling matchup, and he seemed kind of like a fire was lit under him a little bit, and he was very aggressive, and I know that's a jiu-jitsu match, but maybe kind of doing a match like that against someone who talks a lot of crap like AJ, maybe that got him fired up, maybe a little more passion into it, because it hasn't been there in Bellator. I just feel like he's kind of been going through the motions, and to me, it's not really surprising that he's 1-3. I mean, I know he's getting a little older, but all those fights, maybe except the Korshakov fight. So I'll put the last three. He probably should have won and hasn't. So, I think he just needs it's sometimes hard when you've accomplished as much as he has to kind of get back up. But maybe these last couple fights coupled with that grappling match has maybe kind of got that fire built back under him. And maybe he wants to kind of finish his career strong, knowing he only probably has, in my opinion, maybe like 3 solid years less of being, a really competitive fighter at a high level.
Yeah, and I hope so too. I had been, I forgot which Bellator event, the last time they were in San Jose. So what was it, like last year? Um, that's something he had said. He didn't really want to compete for too much longer. So something just seems like it's been off. I know, he was coming back from that injury and wanted to come back strong. And like you said, just kind of finish out the last few years on a nice run. Maybe that got in his head of picking a timeline and whatever, something threw him off there. But yeah, I think that now it's kind of gotten down to this is a fight he needs to win. Like you said, hopefully because he looked good in that grappling match, it lit a fire under his butt. But another thing that kind of worries me is he's saying that he doesn't want it to go to decision. He needs that finish. So I hope that the pressure of him wanting to get this finish doesn't have him go in there and leave openings for mistakes just because he's so eager for a big finish and a big win.
Yeah, but it's refreshing because he's a guy that is kind of a decisionator of sorts. He hasn't been a guy that's gone out there and really put guys away. I remember early on in his WEC run, he had some really nice submissions, but really since coming over to the UFC, he really hasn't had that many finishes. Most of his wins are by decision. So even taking on a guy you could say, maybe hasn't been relevant in 7-8 years, the fact that if he could put him away, I still think is a big deal. So I think that's good for Benson. And we had Lewis writing in a question, was a mistake for him to leave the UFC. I don't think it was a mistake because if he fought like this in the UFC, they might have still cut him anyway. He hasn't overall, I think, fought that great. And again, I think when you reach a certain point, and he's been fighting. I always talk about the 9-year rule, Kayla. When you have 9 years as a professional MMA fighter, there typically seems to be a drop off in your just level of ability. And obviously, Ben Henderson's hit that point. He's passed it. He's already been a world champion. So you add in the years plus what he's already done. It is really hard to kind of get up and go, I got to fight Patricky Pitbull. You know what I mean? Like, no offense to Pitbull, but it's kind of like I fought guys, way bigger than that. So it's kind of hard to really get up and be like, and motivated. But like I said, losing 3 out of his last 4, maybe he is starting to do more grappling matches. So that's one thing that, maybe he can transition to after his MMA career as well. So maybe because of that, he's finding more of the joy in the martial arts side of things. And, maybe that sort of thing will actually help him in preparation for this matchup. But we'll find out on Friday. But I'm looking forward to hopefully a better performance from him.
So are you predicting win by submission?
If he's going to win, well, you know what? Huerta has been not. I kind of ran through his recent record. He does have quite a few knockout losses in there. Obviously, it wouldn't be one punch, but I don't think Huerta gets submitted. Yeah, I think he can finish him though. I don't know by what. I think either or is likely. Either kind of a ground and pound stoppage or maybe catching him in like a rear naked choke. Is my
okay.
Very probable.
Ray says. Ray saying Bendo by TKO.
Very very likely. Also,
I'm thinking that maybe. I mean, if he's looking for that finish, I think that it's probably going to be by submission. I think that I think that it's probably going to get to the ground just because I think Roger's not going to want to stand and strike with him, but we'll see.
So also featured on the card, if you're wondering what else is going down for Bellator 196, we're going to have the wrestling phenom from Penn State University, Ed Ruth, 4-0 so far in his mixed martial arts tender. He looked absolutely fantastic in his last Bellator fight. So he will be taking on a guy by the name of Ion Pascal, coming out of Romania. He's 17-7, so vastly more experienced than the 4-0 Ed Ruth. So at least in mixed martial arts, obviously, he's wrestled a very long time. So that one should be very intriguing. That one's actually...
He's been wrestling with Khabib.
Well, that's a good guy to wrestle with. Ed Ruth's a monster. This is actually going to be a catch weight at 175. So I think Ruth, his last fight was at middleweight, might be trying to make the drop down to welterweight. Pascal is normally a welterweight. So they're going to kind of meet a little bit in the middle. So that'll be a 175 catch weight. However, fantastic fight. And also, she's not doing kickboxing this time. She's doing MMA again. That's Miss Dynamite herself, Denise Kiholtz, who actually won her first ever MMA bout for Bellator not too long ago. And she, of course, is the reigning women's Bellator kickboxing champion as well. And I believe she holds a black belt in judo. So she is a very diverse mixed martial artist. And she'll be making her second appearance for Bellator MMA, but her third overall fight in mixed martial arts. She'll be taking on a woman by the name of Petra Kastova, coming out of the Czech Republic, who is 3-2 so far. So that'll be an interesting matchup to see how Denise follows up her great submission win in her Bellator MMA debut.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that's Bellator 196, and then heading over to the kickboxing portion. Super excited. In the main event, the man, the myth, the legend, right in your neck of the woods, Kayla, there in Southern California, Raymond Daniels, the absolute monster, the point karate expert and reigning Bellator welterweight world kickboxing champion. He'll be taking on, boy, this is a hard name to pronounce. It's Djibril Ojo, if I said that correctly. That's going down for the main event. Of course, Raymond Daniels, known for his knockout of the year, the double tap 180 switch kick against Francis Ambang. Of course, he can do tornado kicks. He can do them all. He's just absolutely fantastic. So far, undefeated under the Bellator kickboxing banner. No one has really even come close to touching this guy. His last fight taking on one of the legends of the sport, Kareem Gaji, over 100 professional fights. I know it was stopped because of a cut on Gaji, but Daniels was definitely lighting him up. Hit him with a flying knee. That's what caused the cut. The fight couldn't continue. I would like to see that match run back, but very intrigued by this matchup. I love Raymond Daniels. He is an absolute treat to watch. If you've never watched kickboxing before, do so on Friday night. You're going to be entertained. Raymond Daniels is amazing. He's one of the...
How do we catch the kickboxing fights?
Huh?
How do we catch the kickboxing?
Right after Bellator 196 on Paramount. Right after. You don't have to change channels. Okay. You don't have to worry about being on stupid tape delay or anything. You just watch it like normal, which is amazing. That's how it should be. We're also going to have the legendary Aussie kickboxer John Wayne Parr go for his 100th professional kickboxing victory as he takes on Adir Lopes. Boy, that's going to be absolutely fantastic. John Wayne Parr had an amazing head kick knockout in his last Bellator kickboxing match, and obviously I think it'd be a treat if he got his 100th win. He's been doing it for a long time. I think he's in his 40s now. Dude's still fighting. Amazingly tough, but that's a great matchup to see. And we're also going to see arguably the best female kickboxer in the world. I mean, it's hard to debate with 44-0 and 3 draws, Kayla, as Jorena Bars will take on Athena Evmorafadi, if I said that name correctly. So I would definitely check her out. She's a beast. I think she actually beat Chris Cyborg in a kickboxing match. So she's a monster. So I look out for her as well.
I'm pumped. I'm definitely watching the kickboxing. Thank you for that quick recap of what we should expect.
No problem. Speaking of kickboxing, real quick, again, happened in your neck of woods there, Southern California, Los Angeles. Glory 52 was this past Saturday. If you missed it, I think you can still catch the replay on ESPN3, and of course, the Super Fight Series is still on Fight Pass. But Robin van Roosmalen, the featherweight champion, boy, he put an absolute whooping on Kevin Van Nostrand, a guy I'm really high on. I thought maybe he could push Van Roosmalen, make those first couple rounds really interesting with his knockout power. But the Dutchman was having none of that, just came forward, didn't even really get hit with much. I mean, as noted by the striking, he was 199 of 313 Strone, and Van Nostrand, despite throwing a huge amount of strikes, 491 in a 15-minute fight. That's absolutely ridiculous. He only landed 157. So, Van Roosmalen just kind of kept on coming forward. His conditioning was amazing, picked his shots well, and just kind of wore Van Nostrand down as this fight went on, and once again defends his middleweight title. Then former middleweight champion Simon Marcus, as I thought, just why this fight was booked, I don't know, Kayla. Zach Wells is like 5-0 against Simon Marcus, is one of the best in the world. He's like 40-3 or some ridiculous thing like that. Of course, knocks him out in the first round. That was dumb. That never should have been booked. I feel bad for the kid, Zach. He took an unnecessarily knockout loss that should have never been booked. Then Chris Camuzzi made his second kickboxing bout. He took on a little more experienced guy this time around in Mike Lemaire. Very close fight. This was definitely very much highly competitive, completely different than Camuzzi's first matchup where he kind of breezed through it. Ended up getting the split decision, did Mike Lemaire, just quite outpacing Chris Camuzzi. And despite obviously being an MMA fighter, obviously routinely going for 15 minutes, having conditioning, I think that kind of hurt him a little bit because in this fight, because he couldn't really set his own pace. Lemieux was very much throwing the strikes early and often, as noted by him putting up 191 strikes in the 9 minutes to just 118 by Chris Camuzzi. I think because MMA, you can kind of settle in because it's a 5-minute round. I think the fact he took on a more experienced opponent who knows, hey, I only got 9 minutes. I got to go.
Right.
I think that actually tired Camuzzi out because I don't think he was kind of ready for that. And I think this in the fight, he'll probably realize, like, hey, I can't really sit back and kind of wait for the rounds to come and kind of peak in rounds 2 and 3. I got to go. I only got 9 minutes.
Start quick.
Yeah, and I think that even though it was competitive, it was close, I think he's going to learn a lot from this one. I still think he's one of the top guys in the division, despite losing to Lemieux.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, if he looked good and that was only his second match, there's more to come.
And then
one thing I want to say too, since we're talking about Glory, and I don't know if you've downloaded the app either, but my friend works for Pluto TV and they have a whole Glory channel. So if you ever want to just recap Glory or see some of the fights that are streaming, that's another option of how to view.
Yeah.
But I feel like you would definitely love that, a whole Glory channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely if you missed it this past weekend, I would highly recommend that, in addition to obviously having Fight Pass because they have so much Glory content on there as well. Also in the Super Fight Series, Paulo Zero took on former Ultimate Fighter contestant Myron Dennis. I actually thought Myron Dennis performed very well. I actually thought may have actually got this one out, but the judges went the way of Zuralev, who, if you look at total strikes, Dennis was more active through 77. He landed more, 31-27. But I think the power shots obviously were in favor of the man from the Ukraine and Zuralev, and I think that's one of the reasons why the judges win it. But super close fight, very entertaining. I think Myron Dennis, a guy a lot of people thought had, no chance of beating a guy the caliber of Zuralev, I thought held his own very well, and definitely a guy I'm looking forward to in the light heavyweight division, which is not right now a particularly strong division for Glory. So I think Myron Dennis coming in kind of offers some new blood as well.
That's exciting.
Then we had Mexon, who's the female champion, got by, what's her name, Ashley Nichols. Very close fight, closer than I thought it was going to be. And I'm just glad, again, like I said before, I'm glad Mexon didn't get hurt because they already booked her next fight in Glory before this one happened, which, again, I don't like at all. I think that's so dumb. So luckily for Glory, their champion did not suffer any major injuries or anything. And so barring any injuries in training, should be good to go for her title defense coming up against Emile Debbie in May. So, all right, that's Glory 52. Again, you can catch that, as Kayla's saying, she put a link there, the Pluto TV app, of course, YouTube, ESPN, as well as UFC Fight Pass. So, all right, let's get to what everyone wants to talk about now. UFC 223. Coming to you live this Saturday on pay-per-view, Brooklyn, NYC, Barclays Center, beautiful new arena there in Brooklyn. 5 fights on the main card. Before we get to those real quick, what are you looking forward to on the undercard, Kayla?
Oh, man, the undercard. Well, not the main card has just taken so much of my attention, but this card's actually stacked really nicely. I think that there's a nice fight between Felice and Carolina. Obviously, they're gonna be watching closely to this co-main event, but yeah, that's a nice matchup. I think Felice Herrig needed someone like a fight with Carolina to continue moving her, up within the rankings. And she's looked okay in her last couple of fights to where, I don't know. One of my friend is like such a big fan of hers, and I told him, I said, there's just something about her fights or that I don't know. She kind of gets lost in her division a little bit, but I think that this is a really big fight for her. I think that the Borg and Moreno fight super exciting. Let me see. On early prelims, I'm always a fan of Alex Caceres. I think that he's an exciting fighter. What about you? What do you think about
Yeah,
the
obviously
undercard?
the main prelim is going to be Felice Herrig against Carolina Kovalevich, which is a fantastic matchup because Felice obviously has been very nice since kind of her little mini hiatus that she had. She had a very competitive bout here in Detroit against um, Cast Iron Casey. So
Mhm.
it'll be interesting how she takes on Carolina, who's one of the best in the world, really good, and obviously a really good kickboxer. So I'm really interested to see how she plans to counter the very aggressive forward attack of Carolina, and obviously how good she is in the clinch, and whether or not Felice maybe will try some of. She does have good jiu-jitsu. I think that's one of the most underrated things about Felice. So I wonder if maybe we'll see Felice maybe try to make this more of a wrestling match. Carolina has been notoriously tough, unless you're Gedalia, of taking her down. But so that's something she kind of has in her back pocket a little bit. Carolina, while very good at not getting taken down, I wouldn't say has anywhere close to the submission skills of Felice. So I think that's a kind of a nice X factor in some of those scrambles and up against the cage situations that Felice has that Carolina doesn't. So I want to see if that comes into play at all, or if Carolina's just going to be able to do her thing, beat her up in the clinch, or beat her up just straight standing, because she's really good at that. So that's why it's intriguing. Like you mentioned, Moreno Borg, very intriguing. But I'm really interested to see how Ashley Evans Smith looks at 125 pounds. I always thought she was a pretty good size bantamweight. So her moving down to 125, to me, those girls should look out. I think she's going to be a huge flyweight. And for Beck Rawlings, a girl who's fought a lot of her career at 115, look out. You're going to face a really big girl coming your way. I mean, we're talking about a girl who knocked out Fallon Fox. So we're talking about someone who definitely is going to be a big girl for this weight class, and definitely is someone that has some pretty good wrestling skills as well.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of intriguing fights here.
All right, let's get to that. Let's get to that main card here. Ray's saying he likes Raging Al versus the Irish Dragon, and that's actually where we kick off the main card at 155 pounds. This
Mhm.
matchup was actually supposed to happen here in Detroit for UFC 218, but Felder ended up taking on Charles Oliver instead. We now get it rebooked here for UFC 223. You know, I think the one thing about Al is I think Al is probably the more talented fighter, but the thing is, with him kind of fighting so sporadically as of late, I mean, he's had one fight in the last 3 years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's you'd like to think his skills haven't degraded, but that one fight, Kayla, was against Diego Sanchez. So how much stock can you really hold into that? A guy who's clearly past his prime in Diego. Can you
Mhm.
really say that win, a
Diego.
year ago in Nashville was like amazing? You know what I mean? So that's the one real negative I have for Allen. I feel like he's missed out on like the prime of his career a little bit. This should have been an opportunity for him where he could have, shot up the rankings, but instead we kind of had him sit and complain about Reebok and selling houses and all that stuff in Long Island or whatever he was doing, and complained about taxes for New York. And I feel like he's focused on everything but fighting. So I wonder where exactly is his head at, because Paul Felder has been fighting that whole time and trying to get better this whole time in these last 3-4 years.
And has been getting better. And I think that is the big question is people, like you just said, I'll kind of use those years of his prime, or and not that he's not still in a good place, but yeah, definitely used a lot of time focusing on other things. I don't know. Maybe that's going to be more fuel to where he wants to come back and fight. Maybe he's starting to feel a little bit better about the direction that the company's going or miss fighting. But that's really the big question there is that time off going to hurt his game? Because Paul Felder's been, fixing those holes in his game, has been, what, isn't he on like what's his
He's on
run right
a
now?
3-fight winning streak with 3 consecutive
Yeah, 3 fight
and beat some tough guys. Alex Ricci, Steve Ray,
exactly.
and Charles Oliveira. Those guys are not pushovers.
And to get those finishes on them. Yeah, so it's going to be a good fight. I think that a lot of people are, of course, loving that this is probably going to open up that main card with a banger. Ali Quinta has been saying that he doesn't think it's going to go very long, and he's not really looking to make it be this exciting brawl. But I don't think Paul Felder is going to give him that option to kind of play it easy. I think that it's definitely going to be an explosive shorter fight, or at least just, yeah, a lot of hands thrown.
Yeah, the way he's been fighting, Paul Felder is definitely the man on the roll. He's going to be a little taller. I think he's a little bigger than Al Iaquinta, and I think is really the more diverse striker. I mean, when he came into the UFC, he was really known for his spinning attacks. Now, he's kind of calmed down on those, but he still has a lot of those in his arsenal. He does them very well. And obviously, he's been training a lot over in Milwaukee with, Duke Rufus and Anthony Pettis and, those guys doing all the crazy kicks. So if anything, those kicks have gotten better since he's entered the UFC. He's done a lot of training with Dallin Cerrone and the fellas over there at the ranch in New Mexico. So I think he's a guy.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
to add to that, he's been calling a lot of fights. And,
Yeah.
I think that was something that I was speaking to Frank Mir about. Everyone's like, oh, you've been, out of fighting for so long. But there's something to calling fights. You're one, continually studying these guys and the evolving sport of mixed martial arts. But there's something to calling a fight that I think it adds to your game and adds to your fight IQ. So that's another thing that he has that Al obviously hasn't been focusing on.
So we'll see, because this is obviously a big matchup in the lightweight division. If Iaquinta wins, I think this will be his, let's see here, this will be his 6th win in a row. And he all of a sudden is kind of right in that title conversation. He either puts himself on the cusp of a title shot, or maybe he gets it. Obviously, we now know with Tony probably getting the winner here in the main event, probably now has to take one more regardless. But, this is a really big deal in the lightweight division, and whoever wins definitely puts himself in a very good position, considering how much of a logjam there has been lately in this division.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Kayla, starting to get some clarity of what's going on at 155 pounds, and this is one of the...
Let me check in.
All right, speaking of 155, we get another great matchup. It's kind of 155 is one of the basically like the showcase weight here at 223, as former Ultimate Fighter winner Michael Chiesa takes on former lightweight champion Anthony Pettis. Now, of course, Anthony Pettis has fallen on some hard times as of late, and really since losing his championship to Rafael Dos Anjos going back to March of 2015, included a brief stint at 145. He has lost 4 fights to just 2 victories. One of them against Jim Miller, which, is Jim Miller. And however, he did beat Charles Oliveira, and I think the surprising thing about that one wasn't so much that he beat Charles Oliveira, but the fact he submitted Charles Oliveira. I think that was kind of the big deal in that fight. But other than that, he lost a decision to Eddie Alvarez, where he pretty much just got tied up the whole fight and did nothing to counter it. Edson Barboza thoroughly beat him sound with just some tremendous boxing. And then Max Holloway pretty much dismantled him. However, I will say, I think with the weight cut in that fight, I think Pettis was kind of beat before he entered the cage. Regardless, Max still demolished him. And then, of course, Dustin Poirier, despite the injury, Dustin Poirier, I thought, was putting an absolute whooping on Anthony Pettis before that fight started. So, he really hasn't been particularly good. I know he's also tried to do some training down in Jackson's in New Mexico. Again, much kind of like Benson Henderson, a guy he's beaten twice. It's hard to kind of get up for that now. Even though he's 31 years old, you would still think realistically he's in the prime of his life. But he's been at this for a very long time. He started very young in the sport. Speaking of the 9-year rule, he debuted in MMA in 2007. So he's 2 years past that 9-year rule. Or about to be 2 years.
Yeah.
Already being a champion. He's had some injury problems. maybe motivation isn't quite there what it was. It's hard to kind of get back up on that grind when you've already been at the top of the mountain.
Yeah, it's funny when you're talking about Benson Henderson, I almost said we have another guy fighting on a different card that's in a similar situation. Yeah, I mean, I meant to watch that fight with Dustin Poirier again before we hopped on our show because I do think that there were moments that Anthony Pettis had. I mean, it got fight of the night for a reason, but Michael Case is tough. Just when people want to count him out, he finds some sneaky way to get in there and get the submission win. So it's an exciting fight, but I think that this is that time that we're going to see Anthony Pettis where he's going to be facing some of these guys, dominant guys in the division, to see if he can still hang within the top 10 or not. But
yeah, this is a guy who I think I would say
look like
kind of a bad matchup for him. You have a guy that's really big, he's long, he's lanky, he's a very good wrestler, has great submission skills. Notoriously, Anthony Pettis does not do well against those guys. Chiesa is going to want no part of standing up with them. He's going to want to make this into a grappling match. He's going to want to push Pettis up against the cage, push his conditioning. And I think considering, like I said, you wouldn't really consider Dustin Poirier a big wrestling threat or a big grappler. Kind of when you look at that fight and you see how much success Dustin had on the ground against him, and I would say that Chiesa is probably a little bigger lightweight than Dustin, you got to believe that if Chiesa can follow a similar blueprint, Anthony Pettis might be some in trouble. So I hope Anthony Pettis has spent a lot of time with his buddy Ben Askren in Milwaukee because he's going to get a heavy dose of wrestling from the Maverick.
We shall see.
All right. And, of course, for Chiesa, we'll see how he rebounds after that choke against Kevin Lee. That was called early but not called. Shouldn't that whole ordeal, which was about a year ago. So we'll see how he rebounds for that, which actually broke a 3-fight winning streak for the man originally from Oklahoma City. So we'll see.
And you have to see what happens with the fuel that's been fired with Connor.
Yeah.
Because apparently he's been injured by him, so he might want more of a piece of the champ or strip champ. Who knows?
We'll see. Featherweight division. Boy, the UFC must be held high on Calvin Kattar, and I am too, to put him ahead of guys like Iaquinta, Felder, and Anthony Pettis. But here he is sitting in the third fight of the night. Calvin Kattar taking on Renato Carneiro in the featherweight division. Kattar, of course, bursted onto the scene less than a year ago on short notice and what was at the time a pretty big upset, defeating Andre Fili. Then he comes back at UFC 220 and has an absolute fantastic performance for his hometown fans there in Boston, and what was a great fight of two up-and-coming guys in the featherweight division. Ends up knocking out Burgos in the second round. Absolutely fantastic fight to run his record to 18-2. He's looked absolutely fantastic. This kid, Kayla, has not lost since 2010. Ridiculous. He's been on an absolute roll. He even beat some good guys outside of the UFC before obviously getting signed to that short notice debut in July of last year. Looked fantastic so far in both UFC fights. Carneiro's a guy, another up-and-coming guy. He's 11-1 so far in his tenure. He's a guy who came into the UFC in 2014, believe it or not. Actually won his debut against Tom Ninomaki from Finland. Had some injury problems. Has only fought twice since his debut in 2014, defeating Zaburia Tugrov in May of 2016, and then beat actually Jeremy Stevens last year around this time by split decision, but then ran into a man by the name of Brian Ortega, a fight where he was doing well, then started to kind of lose it a little bit in the third round. Looked like he actually was maybe winning those first two rounds. Ortega finally kind of figured things out, started to be more successful on the feet, and then ill-advised Kayla, he shot in on Brian Ortega, and Brian Ortega does what Brian Ortega does. He's called T-City for a reason, slaps on that triangle choke, and loses. And the whole time I'm sitting there watching him, why did he try to take him down? What was he thinking? What did he think was going to happen? So I'm interested to see how I'm seeing how Carneiro bounces back from that loss to Ortega, because Calvin Kattar is an animal right now. He's on a roll. However, if he takes Qatar down, he won't be as in danger of a triangle choke. So that's the one difference in this matchup, though.
Yeah, super exciting. Like you said, the fact that these guys have jumped ahead of some of these older veterans of the sport are also exciting guys. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the fact that you have a win over Jeremy Stevens and we're able to hold your own for a little bit with Brian Ortega. I know we see that Miles and Ray are going for Qatar, but I don't know. I'm just excited to see both these guys perform because I'm not as familiar with them, but
Yeah,
their
because
record
I
so
actually
far.
thought the fighting in Stevens, both guys didn't really fight that great. So it wasn't that surprising that he got the split decision, but then he takes on Ortega, and I thought fought much better in that fight. But like I said, started to kind of lose a little bit of gas. Like I said, Ortega started to figure out, and then maybe because of exhaustion or just pain, made a huge tactical error shooting in on Brian Ortega like that. That was dumb. So I'll be interested to see how he adjusts, and hopefully he learned from that, knowing, hey, I can't just because I'm tired or I'm a little bit hurt, I can't make dumb things. I got to stay mentally tough because guys like Brian Ortega are going to take advantage of that. And so we'll see if that happens again because Qatar has so far, if he has been taken down, he hasn't stayed down long and has been absolutely fantastic standing up on the feet. Great combinations with his punches and kicks. He ties them together very well. Doesn't really even get hit with a lot of hard shots. I think Burgos hit him a couple times, but realistically, he does a good job staying out of a lot of danger. So I think this is a great, intriguing fight. Obviously, Qatar, if he wins again, he really shoots up the rankings to me. And if he wins, he kind of is back where he was, I think, post the Jeremy Stevens victory. So this is a big matchup in the 45 division.
For sure.
All right, co-main event of the evening. Joanna
Rematch.
the former strawweight champion of the world, takes on the woman that took her title away, that being Thug Rose Namajunas in the co-main event of the evening. The first ever mixed martial arts loss for Joanna ended up being a first-round knockout by the now Colorado native Rose Namajunas. They run things back. A lot of people weren't sure whether Joanna should get an immediate rematch despite her former dominance in this division because of how it went down. It wasn't like a close decision or a 5-round fight at all. Obviously, it was a first-round knockout. There were other girls that were kind of lurking around too. But the UFC went ahead with this matchup. I don't have a super problem with it because I think at some point it was going to happen. So we get to see it again. And this is the thing. I was kind of talking with a friend. I brought up a lot of moments of where fighters had success against what seemed to be the better fighter the first time, and then it was kind of proven that maybe it was a fluke. You can look at an example like maybe Junior Dos Santos. Obviously, Junior Dos Santos knocked out Cain Velasquez flush. Everyone thought, oh, man, whew, Cain got scorched. What happened? Came back once, but twice, and absolutely kind of just demolished Junior Dos Santos. You can also look at maybe George St. Pierre, Matt Serra. Matt Serra caught him with a punch, knocked him out, but what happened in the rematch? GSP absolutely, put the hammer down, against Matt Serra. So there are instances of fighters coming back from, a first fight loss to go on to win against that opponent, not once, but twice. Is that the case here, though, Kayla?
Yeah, was she having a bad night or not? And I think that what's cool about this fight is I think, the last time I can remember a woman's fight being like this anticipated or having these two ladies have such a fan base. Even Dana was saying yesterday this could have been a main event fight.
Easily.
I, the last time I can think is maybe like a Ronda versus Misha. There really has potential for a trilogy to be built with this fight for sure. And maybe that be a main event. But yeah, it's going to come down to, and I think, like you said, some people had a problem with Joanna getting that, next shot at the champ. But from how she's come out about saying, it was a matter of her just not being prepared correctly for this fight, because of her dominant run, we really want to see if that's the case. And it's been interesting because both of them really haven't. I mean, Rose is usually pretty quiet anyway, but even Joanna's been a little bit more quiet this week. So I think that, yeah, it's very interesting to see if, was someone able to figure her out? I think her last few fights leading up to this fight with Rose too, she did start to go to decision more. Maybe some of these girls just stepped up their game and started evolving to get, close to figuring out how to take out the champ. But Rose is just on another level. I was watching some of her last few fights leading up to the Joanna one, and she's just evolved tremendously with each fight.
Now,
So
I think one thing I mentioned previewing this fight the first time was, even though Joanna is like one of the tallest girls in the division, has maybe one of the longest reaches, Rose would be the first opponent that she had fought mixed martial arts wise that was just as tall as her and just as long as her. And so I think typically being the taller fighter and the longer fighter, she got used to being able to fight at a certain range and really avoid power shots. Case in point, look at her fight against Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade is an absolute monster, right? But she's only 5'1". Joanna's 5'6". That's a big difference. She avoided a lot of those shots and pretty much picked Andrade apart for 25 minutes.
right.
Can't do that against Rose. Rose is 5'6" as well. Has almost the same exact reach. I'm going to actually double check on the.
Yeah, I was just looking at it, 65.
I have, let's see here. Yeah, in fact, well, Rose is 5'5", 5'6" for Joanna, and they both had the same exact reach at 65 inches. So basically the same height and reach. So I think fighting somebody with basically the same kind of physical attributes, she wasn't ready for that. So she got into a closer range, which is obviously the power range for Rose, and I don't think was used to that. Will she be able to make that adjustment, having to fight maybe a little more on the outside to avoid that power? And because of that, will she be able to still put up the same type of volume? Because she is very much a volume striker. For every one you throw, she likes to throw 5. Will she be able to do so at that new range? So I actually think we're going to see a very controlled, calm, and patient Joanna in the first round. I don't think we're going to see her put up quite the numbers in the first round, maybe even the first 2 rounds. I think she's really going to have to try to figure out that range, because that's also a good thing too, because I would say Rose is the better submission artist. Even though Joanna is hard to take down and hard to hold down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say necessarily you got to worry about her submitting you off her back, that being Joanna. So Rose can kind of do some creative things. She can maybe go for some rolls. She could maybe even pull, she can do some of those things to get Joanna into a bad position if the striking isn't going her way, or Joanna seems to really be staying on the outside and Rose can't land one of those big bombs like she did in the first one. So I really think this matchup in the first 10 minutes is going to be very key, because if Joanna doesn't figure out that range, I think very much Rose can either get a knockout or get a takedown and maybe scramble for submission. But if Joanna can figure out that range, she has the gas tank, and she obviously has the ability to throw, crazy, ridiculous, 300 strike numbers, which I'm not sure if Rose can do. I'm not sure if Rose can keep up her style for 25 minutes.
I agree. Yeah, it's exciting. It's and that was one of the biggest things from the first time they matched up. As exciting as it was that she dethroned the champ, I wanted to see both ladies spend more time in there and figure each other out. But Rose said that she was able to figure out Joanna's rhythm pretty quickly. So yeah, it's going to be a matter of, like you said, if Joanna's gone in and fixed that. Do you think that her ego is going to play into it, or you said that she's going to go in there calm, I think? Because that's another thing that people are questioning. Some people looked at her more as a poor loser, blaming it on her nutritionist and her preparation for the fight. Has her ego been broken,
No.
since she's been on as champ?
I don't think so. I think I hope it isn't, because if she's approaching this matchup the same way, then she's going to lose. She has to realize she needs to make an adjustment. And I would say, as a fighter that is always kind of been a more technical fighter, she should be able to realize that she just needs to make a small adjustment to make this matchup more competitive, number one, and number two, more in favor of her getting the victory. So if she doesn't realize that, then that's just horrible, poor planning, not only on her part, but her coach's part.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to this main event of the evening for the lightweight championship, as current featherweight champion Max Holloway moves up to 155 pounds to take on undefeated 25-0 Russian fighter Habib Nurmagomedov, the Eagle. Max Holloway, of course, like I said, he's putting on a very impressive streak of his own on the line. I believe it's something like 10 fights in a row. Let me double check this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fight winning streak on the line. So 12 fights versus 25. And going on here for the main event, that's including 3 consecutive title fights with a win over Anthony Pettis, as well as 2 very dominant victories over Jose Aldo in the process of defending his featherweight championship for the first time earlier or late last year right here in Detroit, Michigan. So coming into this matchup, obviously, we kind of said earlier, Kayla, there are some question marks for Max Holloway. One, how will he look at 155 pounds? We haven't seen him fight at this weight, and I'm not sure, maybe very early on and is not, pre-UFC tenure, maybe he fought at 55, but that was, he debuted in the UFC, Kayla, in 2012. Or I'm sorry.
It's been
I think it was, 2012. So it's been a while. So even if he only fought 155 once before that, it hasn't done that in 6 years. Also, how will he fare? He was just out of maybe just about a month ago. He had a foot injury. How's he going to look moving around on that foot? This is a very serious
and cutting a lot of weight quickly.
So even though he's actually an inch taller than Khabib and his reach is only 1 inch less than Khabib, physically he looks to be around the same size. But Khabib is obviously a guy people have talked about moving up to 170. So you would think kind of width-wise that favors the Russian in Khabib Nurmagomedov. The other thing is Khabib has taken some tough shots. Case in point, look at his last fight. Edson Barboza hits really hard. And he hit him with several hard shots, spinning kicks, and Khabib just seemed like he was just eating lunch and just went right through him, took him down, and absolutely mauled Edson Barboza, one of the best fighters in the world in any weight class, made him look like an absolute child. And Edson Barboza is a very put-together, strong individual. However, we've never seen him try to do this for 25 minutes, Kayla. Max Holloway moving up a weight class, should in theory have the better conditioning. But will his strength and energy just be sapped, and will he be put away before that even comes a question in this matchup when you look at some of the performances that Khabib's had in the octagon? And that's really the big question is not if Max Holloway will get taken down, because he will. I don't care. You can throw up whatever takedown statistic you want about him being 84% takedown defense and he hasn't been taken down in 5 years and all that. I don't care. He's going to get taken down in this fight. It's what he does when he gets taken down and how long does he stay down for those length of time. Because the longer it stays standing, that he can be dancing around and moving and doing his punches and bunches, he has a chance to be victorious. But the longer Khabib is having some sort of physical contact with him other than getting hit in the face, the advantage is Khabib.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, I think that if Max has a chance here, it's definitely going to be in the first 2 rounds. He needs to, I think just with that, intense weight cut that he's going up a weight class, like you said, that he hasn't fought at for a very long time, I think that it's just a matter of him finishing this fight early, because if he goes those later rounds and continues to feel the strength and power that everyone talks about with Khabib, it's just not going to be a fun night for him. But that's what makes it exciting. Like you said, Max Holloway on that long run, obviously, one of the better strikers in the UFC, he has a chance, and he believes he can do it. So
we shall see. We got a couple of comments here I want to get to before we get to picks. I don't believe Joanna tapped. I don't remember seeing a tap. So I'm going to say no, maybe some other angle. But even if she did, she was hurt. It was going to get stopped regardless. And then Ray said, sorry, Tony got hurt. But yeah, I am glad that they were able to still have Khabib fight somebody. Like I said, it was just shocking the fact it was Max Holloway just coming off an injury not that long ago. I think that's more what it was to me, more so than anything. So anything to add to those comments real quick, Kayla?
I think that too, Khabib is someone who said that, with his last fight with Edson, he wanted to show he says that he decided to stay up and stand and trade a little bit because he wanted to show people that he also is confident in his striking. So that'll be interesting. I'm glad we got an alternative that will also test out his stand-up abilities too. We'll see how long he stays standing with Max, but that kind of intrigues me too. So I'm glad that they were able to replace Tony with a guy
Similar.
like Max
The
Holloway.
difference is I don't think Max Holloway has quite the submission prowess that Tony
Yeah,
Ferguson
no.
does. That's kind of the X factor. I think Max is a decent grappler, but he's not a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There's
Yeah. I
a
mean, that's why
difference.
we have to see the fight with
So,
Tony for sure.
all right. With that said, let's get to picks UFC 223 this weekend, Saturday, April 7th, from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, NYC. First fight of the evening, we go to the lightweight division. The raging Al Iaquinta against Paul the Irish Dragon Felder. Going with Paul Felder. He's the guy that's been more active. I think he's gotten better. And I think Paul Felder is going to show his improvements on Saturday night. So I'm going to go with the Irish Dragon in this one.
I am as well. He's had a nice run, 3 knockouts in a row. I think that there is something to calling fights and stepping up your fight IQ and doing so. So I'm also going with Felder.
Now, people that know me know that I've been a huge Anthony Pettis fan for many years. I have his see if I don't know if I can reach it. No, I'm not gonna bother. I might tip over my chair or something. I have the Anthony Pettis Wheatie box and stuff like that. I've been a huge fan of his for a long time. Of course, he's taking on Michael Chiesa in the next matchup in the lightweight division, but he just hasn't seemed right as of late. And he took a beating in that fight against Dustin Poirier, and I just think that Michael Chiesa, I would say at any time in his career, would have been a hard guy for Anthony Pettis to beat. And despite Chiesa, losing to Kevin Lee in his last fight, having maybe a little bit of an injury problem as of late, I'm going to go with Michael Chiesa in this one. I think his wrestling skills, and I also think he's a tough guy to knock out too. I think it's going to be Anthony Pettis is going to have to have a A+ type of performance if he wants to get by Michael Chiesa.
I agree with everything you're saying, and I think it's going to be a super tough fight, but my gut is telling me that Pettis is going to be able to pull this one off. I don't know why, but I'm just going with my gut.
All right, next fight of the evening at featherweight, Calvin Kattar against Renato Canero. I'm going with Calvin Kattar. I think his last fight against Shane Burgos, a guy I was really high on coming into that fight, the fact he was able to get by him, has looked just absolutely fantastic in his UFC tenure so far. I think that he's going to be able to deal with Canero, so I'm going to go with Calvin Kattar in this one.
Yeah, I am too. I'm going to follow the hype. A lot of people are very, supportive in this guy and thinking that he's the new up-and-coming talent, this new prospect. So I'm also going to go with Calvin Kattar.
Co-main events of the evening for the Women's Strawweight Championship of the World. Rose Namajunas defending her championship for the first time against the former champion, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Going with Joanna. I feel like she will make the necessary adjustments to turn this into a 3-round plus affair, where it's definitely more in her world. So I'm going to go with Joanna, #and new.
I think that Rose has figured her out. I think that she has also just, come into her own as champ. So I'm thinking that she is going to get the upset again against the former champ.
Main event of the
Then Joanna moves up.
Main event of the evening, speaking of moving up, Max Holloway, the current featherweight champion, moving up to 155 pounds to fight for the vacant lightweight championship, taking on undefeated Russian fighter 25-0 Khabib Nurmagomedov in the main event of the evening. Full camp, short camp, foot injury, no foot injury. Khabib over Max Holloway is my pick. I love Max. He's a tremendous fighter. I love his attitude. I love the is what it is. I love the cupcakes. I love his Hawaiian attitude, his accent. I love everything about this kid. But Khabib is a absolute monster. I'm just not sure if a week is enough time to prepare yourself to what this guy can do inside a mixed martial arts cage. So I'm going with Khabib Nurmagomedov in this one.
Yeah, I'm such a fan of Max Holloway, and totally respect him, like I think most do, of him stepping up and taking this fight. It's just a matter of, I think, just the time. And I know that he believes that this weight cut and recovering from the injury that he can go in there and do it. But I just think that Khabib is someone that is on another level, and you need more time to prepare for him. So I think that, yeah, I'm predicting that it's going to be a win for Khabib, and it's his time, you know. He's been putting in the work, undefeated.
All right, that's it for picks as we wrap up another week of Beyond the Cage Live here on MMA World and MMA UK. Any other final thoughts, Kayla, as we end this week's broadcast?
I have a quick question for
Sure.
you and whoever's viewing. So there was a whole scene. It says that Conor McGregor crew caused a chaotic scene at the media day. There were bike racks thrown. A laceration was confirmed that Michael Chiesa, you know, okay, yeah, something was thrown and basically he's been injured. Do you think that Conor's now going to be kicked out of, or I guess 86th out of the event, or do you think he'll still be cage side?
No, they want him there. He'll be there. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls what he did in his buddy Charlie Ward's fight there in Bellator and runs it to the.
Oh my gosh, don't even say that.
You know it's coming.
All right, well, we'll see.
So, all right. She is
Look
Kayla
forward
Beatty.
to.
Again, as I mentioned, you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at fangirl_MMA. I am Jim Graham, your host for this afternoon. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham and Instagram at TheJimGraham. I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in, and thanks again to our friend Miles Painter manning the comments here this afternoon. Thanks to everybody that tuned in on MMA World or MMA UK or wherever you enjoy listening and taking in Beyond the Cage with myself and Kayla. So again, like MMA World here on Facebook, facebook.com/MMA World with 2 extra Ds, and then facebook.com/Mixed Martial Arts UK as well. So for Kayla Beatty, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage. Goodbye, everybody.